I don't expect any one person to like all of my images because we're all different people. So for a first thought in regards to image making, the technical simply has to be something that's just an extension of self. You understand shutter, aperture, ISO, focal lengths, DX versus FX, full frame versus APS-C. Just all of that is just second nature. You understand it. It's a given. G'day everybody. How are you going today? It is so good to see you. I can't believe it. We are just a few days from winter. We've finally actually had a little bit of sunshine, and that is very exciting because not only have we been in lockdown, but we've also had no good weather. So there have been two very compelling reasons not to come outside. Just a couple of days ago, the state of Victoria, where I live, we have had reduced restrictions, and now it's okay. It feels a bit more comfortable to go out. Although I have to say, there are a few spikes occurring, so it still feels a little bit uncomfortable. So we've come to surroundings where social distancing shouldn't be a problem. And where we are here, we're probably about 5 or 6 kilometres out from the beautiful skyline that you can see there. We have a very moody day. So today's episode is just about, what I wanted to do is compare this. So we still don't have the Z version of the 70-200. So this is the latest F version of the 70-200, the FLED. And I want to compare that with the kit lens that comes with the Z50. So we have the 50-250, which is equivalent to a 75-375, which is a crazy range. And in the next episode, I'm actually going to bring along my very large 200-400, and we're going to put those two lenses side by side. You might have noticed, you might not have noticed, this outstanding piece of kit right here. This is the Nikon F mount, 200-400 f4 through the range VR2 lens, which was fairly recently superseded by the 180-400, which has a built-in teleconverter, and you basically need to sell a kidney or your house to get it. Today it's going to be the 70-200 up against the 50-250 Z50 kit lens. Let's give them a whirl, and it's just great to be outside. So let's enjoy some pretty pictures. All right. I'll start with some video on the Z7 of the skyline down there at 200mm. Let's do it. I'm going to drop that ISO to the base ISO, 64. Not sure how much difference it makes in full sunlight. And we're creeping along to the end. Now that is the 200mm. That is 200mm on the Z7 handheld here. So we've got both the VR and the internal stabilization helping us getting a very smooth shot at full 200. Now the interesting thing we can do with this lens, of course, is apply DX to it. I'm going to pop the camera on the tripod and we are going to test all that out. Okay. I've rethought my methodology a little bit, and instead of having the Z7 and the Z6 side by side with the two lenses like so, of course we will get the best result if we literally just swap the two lenses. So what we're going to do is start with shooting on the Z6 with the 50-250, and we're going to shoot at 200mm on the lens, which is 300mm equivalent. We're just going to see how they both look. And is this in Australia roughly $4,000 lens? How does it compare to this roughly $200 lens? It's pretty funny, isn't it? They're going to give us similar results. That's my feeling. Let's have a look. Here we are recording at 4K, 1/2 thousandth of a second at f6, because that is the minimum once you're at 200mm, at ISO 100. This is the Z50 lens. You are seeing the footage right now on the screen. This is the 50-250 in DX mode. So it's the lenses are 200, but we're actually at 300mm, 35mm equivalent. All right, you've seen enough of that. Get a sense of it. Let's quickly change. Now, some differences. Not only is this lens way more expensive, but it's obviously larger and significantly heavier. Now, I'm struggling to get that on because I've got that extra mount there, but that's okay. We're on. Let's roll. We're at 200 mil. And let's just get that focus point in the right spot. There it is. Okay. So theoretically, that's the same frame. We'll just go to f6. That's interesting. We can't dial this to f6. We can either do 5, 6 or 6.3. I suppose we'll go to 6.3. So this is now 6.3. So 2.5 thousandths of a second at f6.3 ISO 100 on the Z6 in DX. So this 200mm lens is now a 300mm equivalent. How do they look together, these two shots? We're all going to see this at the same time together. So we have the F-mount lens on the left and the Z on the right, but it would be better to look close up, wouldn't it? In the end, the zoom markings didn't give me an exact same frame size, so I've done my best to match them up, and here we are looking at it at 150%. Of course, you can pause this at any time if you want to scrutinize the pixels. What do you think? More of these sorts of images coming towards the end. Just eyeballing it, and what I remember, they're pretty similar. You really do have to ask yourself the question, $200 versus, if it's on sale, $3,000 to $4,000, probably 3 or 4 times the weight, significantly larger, as we can see. Yes, you at the back there, I can hear you. Yes, that is completely correct. DX crop, FX crop, APS-C, full frame. APS-C, 35mm, depending on which language you like to speak. So that's difference number 1. And, well, difference number 2 is the apertures. Of course, with this lens here, this one's a sliding scale. We are at 4.5 on the aperture when we're wide open, as in zooming back at 50mm, and it goes all the way through to 6.3 when we get up to 250mm. This thing is an aperture of 2.8 through the range. So that is what you pay for. That is what the size and the weight is all about, to get 2.8 through the range. And there's a beautiful bunch of birds flying. Let's just whack this quickly on the Z7, see how quickly we can get that up and running. This is a great, oh, they're getting away from me quick. And, oh man, video mode, go. This is a 375 on the Z7 in 4K. And you know, the other thing that we should not forget with a lens like this versus a lens like this is, well, build quality. You pay for this one to be tougher, weather sealed, made of metal. You pay $200, $300 for this to be plastic, not as tough, not as sealed, perhaps not sealed at all, and it does this. It has a design of lens which is far more prone to being damaged, far more prone to dust, dirt, all sorts of things getting in. I don't like this style of design. And if I could buy every lens, if money was no object and I could buy every lens the way I wanted to buy it, well, I wouldn't buy a design like this. I would like the zooming mechanism, and here's the zooming mechanism on this one. Everything is internal. That to me is a superior design. This is always at risk of breaking, and in my career I have broken 2 lenses because they were extruded. Not broken, but damaged. And obviously when they're like this, they are vulnerable. Sure, there's lots of different types. Some will be tougher, some will be weaker, But that's again part of what you're paying for. But $200 or $300, $3,000 or $4,000 in this country. It's a significant difference. Good food for thought. That was a lovely flock of birds that we captured there, and to be able to get this 50 to 250 onto the Z7 and up and shooting probably in under 7 seconds, I was able to change from stills mode to video mode, and I made another change. I can't remember what it was. I changed the frame rate because I noticed this is at 24 and we're shooting these ones at 25. So I was able to do all that and capture the birds. You'll see a beautiful shot of them flying along the water here. So, as I was saying, what you get for with the price, the size and the weight is 2.8 through the range, and 2.8 through the range obviously offers some amazing things. Firstly, it's depth of field, so you have object separation, and the second thing that you have with 2.8 is low light capabilities. And people these days would start to argue with ever improving higher ISOs and with stabilization, in-body stabilization, as the Z7 and the Z6 have, and this lens is also stabilized. With those two things, you could perhaps argue, if you don't care about depth of field, if you always shoot at f5.6 or 6 and above, or 8 or whatever, you seriously, I mean, we're going to have a look. We're going to wait till we get back to the studio. But optically, these things are going to be similar. So if your work is not mission critical, and your budget doesn't stretch to something like this, and you don't need to shoot 35mm, you're happy with APS-C size, then this really could be quite a compelling option, and considering it's basically 1/10 of the price. I know it sounds mad, and I will wrap this thing up by talking about why did I choose this spot to shoot and why this light. Then we will do some stills at the end, and we will do them both obviously in APS-C in DX mode, so we get the same result. Now the Z6 in stills in DX is only around 10 megapixels, but that's okay, that's enough for 4K. That'll get us there. It'll be all right. We're now at 1/4000th of a second at f4.5 at ISO 100. We'll just get 10 seconds of that. Off we go. It's getting pretty moody. Lovely. Okay, fantastic. Pull this off the Z7. And the f-stops have gone to f4.8, so pretty similar. I wonder how those two shots compare. So, you're now seeing on screen, this is the Nikon Z50 kit lens, the 50 to 250 at 70mm to match the 70 to 200. And to reiterate, it's at 1/4000th of a second, f4.8 at ISO 100. And what we can see here with the view at 150% is the images look quite similar, and then at 200%, well, very similar. So I also wanted to talk a little bit about how and why and how this shot, this place, this light. So I've been photographing these sorts of scenes. The first time I can remember doing this was as a 14-year-old, as a school project. I decided to make a slideshow set to music because it was 1985 and it was a cityscape. So obviously photography is a technical endeavor, no question. But for me, the most important part, now markings here, we don't have 100, we've got 105, so I'm just going slightly south. Hopefully our frames are similar. And the other thing I've got to do, of course, is engage the DX crop. So what we have here, as we can see at the top, the 50 to 250 on the Z6, and we're at 100 ISO, very fast shutter speed, and we are at 102 mil. This image has been slightly brightened because somehow I made the f-stops different. Quickly jumping between the two lenses. It's pretty similar, but there are some slight differences, but they're minor.
So what we're looking at now is the 200, the 70 to 200 2.8 FLED VR, which is the current most recent F version, and this is pixel for pixel. This is 100%. The Z6 only has 24 megapixels, and so on a 5K monitor, it's filling the screen here. And if we look in this area here closely, this is the 70 to 200. It looks pretty good. And there's perhaps not quite as much contrast in the lens that's basically 10 times cheaper. Not as much contrast, yet kind of the same amount of resolution. It's interesting, isn't it? I feel like the resolution, like if you look in here and the grasses down here, they look the same to me. It's very interesting. But gosh, the differences are minimal. I also have a UV filter on the front of the 70 to 200, and I don't have any filters yet on the front of the cheaper lens. Let's have a look at them side by side. Yeah, I mean, they are very, 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 very similar. Very, very similar. That's amazing, really, for the detail. Now let's go to 200. It has been suggested that 200's a better idea when you're viewing on YouTube because of the towers up here and the 18. So this one here on the right, that's the 70 to 200, and this one is the 50 to 250. Have a look there. I mean, I've just adjusted contrast a tiny amount and brought the highlights down a tiny amount. And honestly, the clarity in here on the Mercedes sign, similar clarity through here on the cranes. I mean, if anything, this is looking slightly sharper, to be honest, right now. And is that just a tiny bit of contrast doing that? Because it's a tiny amount of contrast. Yeah, no, I would say that's slightly softer. Slightly. So, looking here close up, I would say that the $300 odd kit lens is sharper than the $3,000 to $4,000 in this country lens. Just a smidge sharper. Very, very interesting. At that particular setting, we're not doing an exhaustive test right now. There is a slight difference in f-stops, and that might be having something to do with it as well. F4 versus F5. That's just a mistake. So I'll have to run the test again. It's a good result. I mean, you know, if we look here at these grasses, I would say they definitely look sharper there. And then let's look here in the middle ground. Gosh, I mean, there's so little in it, isn't it? So this very affordable lens is very affordable. Through here, is there a little bit more sharpness on the? Yeah, I reckon that's interesting, isn't it? I reckon that's those lights there. They're a bit sharper, whereas this doesn't. This has got a bit less contrast in it. Yeah, it's very interesting. So if we just creep that up 2 points, does that make a difference? Now they kind of look the same. Oh, it's so close. It's so close. All right, let's go back.
The technical side of photography is just the very beginning. So when I choose a frame, and when I choose even a day to shoot, for me it's just absolutely all about the mood and the light. And that is totally what drives me. So for this shot and this moment and this day, we've clearly got some beautiful cloud cover that's going on over there, separation between the cloud and the sun. It's very moody, it's very gothic, it's very cinematic, and it makes me think about a Jerry Bruckheimer film, a Ridley Scott film. You know, you've just got a real sense of place and drama. And so for me, so much of what drives my photographic choices, it's got nothing to do with the technical. It's actually looking for some type of drama, some type of story. Can I see jets flying over here? Do I feel some emotion when I look at it? Now, of course, we're all going to respond to scenes in a different way. The technical simply has to be something that's just an extension of self. You understand shutter, aperture, ISO, focal lengths, DX versus FX, full frame versus APS-C versus 35mm versus medium format. Just all of that is just second nature. You understand it. It's a given. That's just automatic. And really the main adventure, once you've got all that stuff in your back pocket, is what are you feeling? What's driving you?
and what's motivating you. And that is when photography gets truly exciting. See ya.